Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, how are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new Fallout 76 camp video. So, if you've just headed out of Vault 76 and you're looking to build your first camp, then this should be the video for you, as we're going to go through a whole bunch of different tips and advice in getting you started building your first camp and building something that is maybe a little bit more interesting than just a box with a workbench in it. We're going to get a few plans and show you where to pick up some of the more important plans nice and easily early on and as you progress through the game. And then we're going to wrap it all up by building a nice starter home using the stuff that you should reasonably have access to and get yourself set up with a cool camp to be going on with for now. In addition to everything in this video, I will link down in the description and I will put them up on cards as well in the top right corner of the video. Links to a number of other guide videos and things I have, some of which will pertain to camp building, some will pertain to other bits and pieces as well. I also have absolutely tons of different camp builds if you want to take a look at those and get some inspiration or build something along those lines, and they're full of different tips and stuff as well. There's some really useful techniques in the guide videos as well as in the build videos as well, so if you want to dive into all that stuff, we've got a lot for you to get stuck into. So first up, we are right on the landing of the vault here, and you can see we've got Pennington here, the robot, and we've got a sign for the Wayward. Just down the stairs as well, we've got a couple of NPCs too. And basically, have a look at all of these, talk to all of these, and they will all more or less point you in the same direction, which is off towards the Wayward, as this is where we need to go. It is a tavern inn type deal just down the road from Vault 76 on your way to Flatwoods. So we're going to leg it down the hill and across the road to the Wayward. It's a short jaunt down here, but always seems to be slightly further than I remember it being. Till you arrive out front of the Wayward here. So this area, there's a fair bit going on. You'll get into a few bits of trouble, you'll find a few spots along the way, and on your way into the Wayward, you'll find that there are quests and NPCs and a whole bunch of interactions going on here. I'm not going to spoil any of that for you right now. I'm just going to say work your way through that, pick up the quests, and that's basically where you need to be to get on with camp building. So, once you've got that all established, you can go and talk to this fellow over here by the end of the bar. That's Mort. Lovely chap, and he has some holotapes. And basically, these will give you a couple of quests to head out and build a camp, and the holotapes contain Mort's advice on getting this going and building up your camp. So it's very, very basic techniques and how to operate the camp building system type stuff. So if you're really brand new to it, this will be quite handy for you, I think. So yeah. Follow through with Mort's stuff and jump through those quests, and you'll basically have the operation of the camp building system down. So, that out of the way, let's have a look at how you can get more stuff to build with first, and then we'll start some actual building. So, the thing you need to be building your camp, and basically to make things more interesting, to add items and furniture and stuff to build with in your camp and decorate with, are plans, which I'm sure you've encountered a few of by now. And they come from a variety of different places. Some are specific and will give you a specific set of rewards. Some are a bit more randomized and varied. So first up, if you want to expand the number of generators available to build in your camp so you can power the place, which I would recommend doing, head on down to Charleston. You'll be heading there as part of the main story anyway. You'll find a power station, and this is Poseidon Energy Plant here. It's pretty easy to recognize. And when you arrive there, you will get a event pop-up, which has a timer of about an hour long, that asks you to repower the power station after it's gone kaput. It's an involved quest, but you've got a decent amount of time to work through it, and once you've got the knack of it, you'll be able to fly through reasonably quickly. Doing this will reward you with a plan for a generator. If you then repeat the process, do it again, you will get another plan for another generator. Just make sure you learn the plan as soon as you pick it up, so you don't get duplicates. Now, there are two other power stations around the map, and they have similar events that will also reward you with the same set of plans. However, they are slightly more dangerous areas, and yeah, it's a bit harder to get through those. And they're also slightly more confusing to navigate, to be honest, or so I find anyway. So I'd recommend Poseidon Energy as a place to start there. Okay, so the second way you can get plenty of plans is to take over public workshops. Now, these are scattered all around the map. You'll see the little icon for them there, and you can arrive at this location and head over to the workbench and hit the activation thing. That will generally tell you that you need to clear out any enemies that are present, assuming there are any. So if you have a run around and zap those guys, get rid of them, you will then be able to go back over to the workbench and claim the workshop. This takes a minute while it credits your name to the location, basically, and once you've done that, you will be able to basically build here if you want to. It's a temporary thing, though, so when you leave the world, all of your building will go away. Bear that in mind. But that's not what we're here to do. We want plans. So when you initially take over the workshop, you will be granted a bunch of rewards, one of which will be a plan for something to build in your camp. After a couple of minutes or so, you'll get a pop-up saying defend the workshop, as NPCs will arrive and there might be dogs, or there might be ghouls, or there might be scorched, or something like that. But you'll need to take those enemies out, sometimes in waves of up to about 4. If you're lucky, it'll just be one small one. And when you have successfully defended the workshop, you will get another set of rewards, including another plan. Now, there are a bunch of different workshops all over the map, and you can head to a number of them, take over as many as you want, and basically keep bouncing between them and doing the defense missions, which, when you've got about half a dozen or so, they pop up pretty regularly. So you'll be able to bounce between them, do the defense missions, and rapidly acquire plans. You will get duplicates doing this, so it might take a little while, but it is an effective way to increase your number of plans. Also, a little side note here, even if you have pacifist mode turned on, which if you don't, go into the game settings and check, when you are at a public workshop, you can be engaged in PvP by other players. It's not particularly common, and certainly less common than it used to be as well. Most people are not too bothered. Most players, to be honest, once they've got the plans, are not that interested in taking over public workshops. So it shouldn't be too much issue, but if somebody does decide to dive in and cause hassle, then you can just server hop. If they persist in doing this, then you can block them through the social menu as well, so they can't follow you to other servers. And it works fairly effectively, so if you do have problems, that's an option for you. But generally speaking, if you're doing this specifically, you shouldn't have anything that you're worried about losing anyway, so it shouldn't be too much trouble. So moving on, the last couple of options here are to buy plans, and there are a number of places you can do that. First place you can head to is the White Spring. You can also head to all of the train stations and encounter the same vendors there that you will in the White Spring, but in the White Spring they're all in one place, so it's considerably easier. And you have train station vendors sort of duplicated here, and a whole bunch of vendors who are unique to the White Spring. And most of them will have a range of plans which include stuff for your camp. Some of it will be stuff for armor and weapons and things like that, but some of it will be camp stuff as well. So you can go through here and buy the stuff that they have, the plans that they have for caps. In particular, the person you want to check out is Pendleton here in Studio 58, as the only thing this bot sells are camp plans. Most of them are White Springs themed, but not all of them. There are some really good ones that are a bit more on the scrappy end, if that's your building style. Certainly is mine, so definitely a place to come and spend an awful lot of caps over a while. One other person you might want to keep an eye out for wandering around the wasteland is Grum, a super mutant who we follow by his Brahmin, Charlie the Moo. He is a friendly super mutant vendor who will sell a number of different bits and pieces, including camp plans and the like. So if you happen to find him, he's a random encounter, so there's a few places you can find him. Then you'll be able to pick up a few fairly unique things, including one of the things he tends to have are different building materials, so you can make your walls out of different stuff, bricks and steel and barn type things, stuff like that. So he often has that. So worth keeping an eye out for him there. The last place you can go for buying stuff, and it works pretty well and you'll generally get the best deals from this, is to head over to player camps. If you open up your map, you'll see them marked all over the place. They have a little green V icon if they have a vendor at their camp. Head over there, find the vendor, and you'll be able to buy plans from their vendor. A lot of people sell plans for varying prices. Don't pay too much though, because people do occasionally put things in for silly money, so keep an eye out for that sort of thing. So other than that, we're going to have a little word about later game stuff, and that is if you want to get plans later on, there are a couple of ways of doing this, in fact a whole bunch of ways of doing this, but you tend to need to be a higher level because we're talking about more dangerous kind of content here. So you've got events that pop up every 20 minutes and more frequently as well around the map. Some of those will drop plans for you. There are seasonal events which come on different times. Sort of big global events that Bethesda trigger every so often, so you've got a whole range of those from Fashion Act to Invaders from Beyond and things like that. So keep an eye out for those, as they often have themed plans tied into them as well. Getting into the more dangerous stuff as well, we have Daily Ops. This is supposed to be group content, although if you are high enough level and have a tough enough build, you can run it solo. You get a lot of different plans there. And the other thing is the expeditions. Again, endgame content, but there's a lot of thematic plans available through that system as well. And not a fast way of getting plans, but they are exclusive to that, so it takes a while to work through. But you do get some fairly unique and cool stuff from that. So, there we go. That should have you get started and get the foundation down, and we should also have a way to get all the plans and stuff that you need. So with that in mind, let's start off with a fairly simple starter home type build that will avoid going to the atomic shop or having anything from seasons in your build, as these are two ways you can also get an awfully large amount of camp building stuff. The atomic shop, of course, is a real-world transaction type thing, so that will cost you real-world money, one way or another, if you want stuff from there. And seasons, well, those are time limited, so the ones gone by you may end up missing. Stuff will come back, but again, just do that through the atomic shop, and it takes a while to pick the stuff up. So if there's stuff that you've missed there, I'm going to try and avoid it for the sake of this video, but they are another option if you are getting into things and want to keep an eye out there. So, let's crack on and build, shall we? Okay, so starting at the beginning, we're going to open up the Pip-Boy, hit the Move Camp option down there at the bottom of the screen, and bring up our camp unit here, and choose where to drop it. So I've had a little run around already and decided the best spot is basically on the end of this log here. It's about in the middle. Gives me the right sort of build area. As you can see, we've got the unit there. We're going to hit the build option. You can do that through the change view option as well, as long as you're within a certain radius, specifically this green radius here, which is the outside of our build zone. But if in doubt, just hit the object. Now, we can pick it up and move it in build mode. It doesn't make any difference in the grand scheme, other than to sort of enemy spawns occasionally. But it does get it out of the way of our build, which is kind of helpful for the moment. So we're going to grab a foundation here first up from the floor tab and use the bulldoze feature, which is a very, very handy thing that was added not terribly long after the game actually launched. And will allow us to just kind of remove any shrubs or trees or stones and things that are kind of in the way. Not all of them. And if we log out and log back in again with nothing built, then it'll all come back again. But for getting a nice clear patch so we can see what we're working with, it works quite nicely there. So, we're going to start with the foundation. Funnily enough, it tends to be where you go from. And we're going to go with this 3x2 here, starting in that back corner because the highest point of the ground is kind of going to determine the basic height of the structure, unless you're okay with the ground clipping through, which in this case we don't really want. So we've got one more foundation on the front here that I'm now going to lower down. So I detached the foundation behind so that it was no longer snapped on, and I can then just lower the thing down. If you want to see a detailed guide on how to raise and lower foundations like that, I have one linked down in the description. It's controller agnostic, shall we say? So it should be nice and easy to follow for everybody. And we're going to continue this on around here, adding what will become our porch. And it's a different height just to make it a little bit more visually interesting. That's about all there is to it. On the other hand, as you can see, we've got a bit of ground clipping through there, so we're going to bump it up just a little bit higher, and then we'll snap everything back onto that. Oops, not quite right. There we go. Just so we clear the ground a little bit there. Nice. Easy enough to adjust. Just grab it and change your viewpoint a little bit. There we go. Nice. So that is the floor plan in place. Now we can start making a structure out of this thing. So the raised area is going to be our sort of internal space. We're going to grab some walls. This is the basic wooden set that everybody will start out with. So everybody has access to this one. Get a door in there and get a few windows in as well. Make sure we get them in the right spot. These things are two-sided. There's an internal surface and an external surface, so just keep an eye on that. Make sure you haven't accidentally snapped it on the wrong way round if there is a foundation next to where you're snapping, as that will cause problems on down the line. There we go. That's some windows and some doors in. With that, and for the end here, we're going to put some half-size walls in, because the goal here is going to be to change up the basic shape and profile of the building and make it a bit more interesting to look at. So, moving on to stairs, I'm going to grab this set with the frame on, because whilst the other set is kind of easy to work with, they're just plain stairs on their own, they do sit in the middle of the foundation, whereas this one will allow me to have the stairs up against the wall, which looks a little bit neater, especially when you're building kind of small, which I do recommend. It then means the stairs are not blocking up quite so much room. So, we're going to get some floors in here. These upper floors have to snap onto stairs. There is an indicator of that sort of information in the top right corner there. Just under the budget. We'll grab some of these half ones, which we'll mix up so we can have a little bit of extra variety in the appearance of the floor. Actually, not quite happy with how that looks, but it's fine because I'll be changing it in a minute anyway. So, let's get some half walls on the top here as well, and I'm doing half walls on the top because I personally feel that, especially with small builds, and I do recommend them, as I say, build small, decorate a lot, looks better. I do feel that when you go for a full-sized wall and end up with a really tall double-story structure, the proportions look odd to my eye, so that's why I like to do half walls on the top. It does create its own set of problems, specifically when we come to decorate, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. For now, we'll get these roofs on. These are just the plain roofs. We've gone for the corner pieces as they're nice and easy to use on a small square like this. Down here, though, we're going to do something a little bit different to add a little bit of variety and interest to the shape of the building. So we're going to go down to the bottom here and grab these slanted roofs. You will doubtless, when you're starting off, have a smaller selection to choose from than I do, but we'll focus on the basic ones here. Nice. So we'll get some top arches in just to close these gaps up. And now we've got a couple of other gaps to close. So we're going to grab these fascias in. And that first one went in fine. This one is being awkward, which is not unusual with some of these more obscure shapes, particularly these ones. The problem here is the staircase is blocking the snapping. I don't know why, it really shouldn't be doing, but it is. So we're going to have to remove it, which requires removing everything attached to the staircase, especially with these ones with frames. There's ways sort of around that with the ones that the stairs that don't have frames, but in this case we need to take everything out. So with that done, we can now put that one piece back in and go back and reassemble everything we had to take out. Which I made a point of showing you because this is going to happen sooner or later if you use those stairs. And as I say, I do like them up against the wall like that, so it is what it is. But we're going to jump back up, and now we can put all these bits back in. And we should have a more complete structure. Let's get this upper floor in. And this time I decided to do it a tiny little bit differently, use a couple of different pieces just because it's a little bit... It's the wrong kind of messy before. So we're going to go over and grab these ones that don't have planks on and drop a couple of those in. And let's just alternate these for the sake of variety. Yeah, not so bad. So that's more or less the core structure in place. We'll add some embellishments now around the outside. So, looks okay, but I think we can make it a bit more interesting. And one of the ways we can do that is by using mixed materials. So we're going to replace these half walls, again, with a different set of half walls, specifically the corrugated ones from the warehouse set. The warehouse set is the name of the plan you're looking for if you want to use this. So we'll have a scroll down the walls section and find those. If you've gone through the various approaches I mentioned earlier to finding plans, these warehouse pieces, these corrugated pieces, will be available to you. Might take a little while for them to drop, but they are base game. It's a base game building set, so it's not restricted behind Atomic Shop or Seasons or anything like that. Graham is a good bet for finding building sets, actually. He often has one or two in his inventory, if you can find them. Well, there we go. Mix these up a little bit, and it makes a bit more variety in the appearance. Another good option for doing something like this would be to get the basic brick set, for example, and use the bricks on the bottom half and then wood on the top. That tends to look pretty cool as a sort of half and half vibe as well. But for this one, we're just going to keep it to the corrugated stuff. That'll do for the minute. We'll fine-tune that later when I've got a bit more of a look at what I'm doing. For now, we're going to put a porch on the outside here. Now, if you haven't gone onto the Atomic Shop and bought a load of stuff, then you won't actually have porch pieces available to you, so we're going to have to improvise a little bit. And we're going to get a little bit clever with this. I've put that one wall on the right there, because roofs only snap to the inside of walls, not the outside. You can work around it, but in this case, I want to remove that wall, and I can't, because it's supporting the roof. So what I'm going to do is replace that with a corner piece, which leaves the gap there, breaking the connection to the wall, so now I can take that out. Now, I'll swap that back over to a flat piece, and look at that. A basically floating roof. If you want to see that, there's a video I've got linked in the description, again, with 5 of my favourite glitches and building techniques. So it's got a number of slightly more advanced techniques like this and other things that you can see in a bit more detail there if you'd like, so do check the description for stuff like that. But there we go. Once we've got that roof on, we can snap others to it and we have our porch. But we need some supports, so I'm going to use these stair posts, which match the ones on the stairs inside. Unfortunately, they only snap to the centre of the foundations, which is very, very annoying and silly. So we're going to work around that, again, with another bit of a technique here that I use quite a lot. We're going to stick a foundation on there, next to where we want this post, put this ordinary set of stairs in, and grab an upper floor. We use the half ones for simplicity. Snap that on there. And this is the important bit. We rotate another one on the side at 90 degrees, so it's over the top of the corner of the foundation, where we actually want the post to snap. Now we can grab that post, and by looking at the floor above, we're snapping to that instead of the foundation, and we can make it sit in the middle of the floor above, which is in line with the corner below. Now we pull everything out and move it over, and voila, we have a post in the right spot. So, let's repeat that procedure a couple more times, and then we'll have the full set, and you can see it a bit more clearly. So, foundation, stairs, floor, floor on the side, grab the post, and I've actually mucked this up a little bit. It's snapped to the wrong place, so I need to make sure I'm looking at the top, not the bottom, otherwise it won't work. And there we go, we'll move it into place. It's an important tip, that one, actually. Make sure you bear in mind what you're looking at and where you're looking when you place things, because it will affect whether or not the game can figure out what's going on. It's a thing you'll get used to doing as you build, but where you look is important. So, we'll do one more. That corner we just had a look at, I couldn't get the foundation in, so we'll need a bit of a workaround for. But this one's still simple, so we'll just do the same thing nice and quickly here. Snap onto the corner. Nice. So, I can't get this foundation to snap on to the end here, and I do want to put it along the back here, so that things are sort of following the same shape and pattern. So we're going to go from the middle and just use an extra floor here, just to extend it out a little bit further, and solve the problem that way. Ooh, not quite right. There we go. One thing that's worth noting, make sure the floors on the top are facing either one direction or 180 degrees to it. That way all the posts will be the same way around. If you don't mind them being not matching, then don't worry about it, but if you want them all facing the same way, a little something to bear in mind. As I say, that video goes into a bit more detail, so check the description. So, moving on, next thing we're going to do is get some stairs in. And it's fairly simple to do. We need to take the foundation out, as build order is absolutely critical with things like this. So, stairs first, foundation second, and the foundation will snap through the stairs. Try and do it the other way around, doesn't work. So, something to bear in mind there. We'll run around to do the same thing at the back. Taking a little step backwards for a moment. The reason I want these posts on the corner, apart from the fact they look better on the corner of the roofs, it just makes more sense, is also we're going to put some fences around this porch in just a moment, and if they are snapped to the middle of the foundation, you won't be able to get the fences to snap. So, speaking of those fences, let's have a scroll down and find the right set I'm going to use. These are, again, a basic set that you'll be able to pick up. As with most of the defensive stuff, you will actually get the plans for this all at once when you take over your first public workshop. So we discussed that earlier in the video. First time you do that, you'll get an absolute dump of 4 or 5 plans at once that cover defensive structures like this fence. So, worth doing for that reason, if for no other. And there we go. We've got some fences. I'm putting some gates in these gaps because it looks neat and tidy. These things can be extremely temperamental though, so I would say if they won't go in place, don't stress over it, just leave them off. It'll look fine, and on the plus side, you won't have to open so many gates when you're running around your camp. But it worked okay this time, so we're going to go for it. And like I say, sometimes it's temperamental. So that is our structural elements. It's time to do a little bit of decoration now. And normally I leave this off in my videos just because it's kind of repeating the same placement ideals over and over, but as this is a beginner's guide, we'll give you a couple of little tips and sort of showcase a bit of decoration. We'll start off with a vending machine here. Everybody should have access to this one, and we're going to put it fairly prominently in the camp, because if you want to sell stuff from your stash to other players, stuff that you don't need anymore and want to make a few caps, plans that you've got duplicates of or whatever it might be, then this is the way to do it, and it works better if they can find your vending machine. Generally. So we're going to drop that out front, and for a little bit of decoration to start off, you can put some bits and pieces around it. We're going to grab this oil lamp here and drop that on the top, just for a bit of interest, and we'll come back to this thing later on. Those oil lamps, by the way, you can get from the White Spring. Go to Studio 58, talk to Pendleton that we mentioned before. He's got the antique lights plan. Definitely recommend grabbing that as a priority, because they look quite nice, those things. So, workbenches. We're going to drop in the weapons workbench first. There is an impulse that most people have, both in real life actually and in the game, which is to put the furniture up against the wall and back it onto the wall, which is fine. But I like to kind of rotate it 90 degrees like this every so often, just so things are a bit more interesting and a bit more three-dimensional, for want of a better way of putting it. It just makes the whole thing a little bit more interesting to look at, I think. It means you have to kind of negotiate your way around a little bit more, but it does make the thing a bit more interesting to look at. So this is a punch card machine, very useful when you come to start modifying your loadout later on. Not something you do at the start of the game, but definitely from level 20 and beyond, and especially, I think, once you get to like 65, 70-ish and beyond there, then things really open up, so definitely handy to have that in there. We could drop our power armor station in. I'm going to put this right in the center here, line it up with the fence so it looks neat. Ooh, I thought I was going to jump up to the roof for a minute then. It didn't, fortunately, but that does happen sometimes, especially with low roofs. But that went in okay. Grab the Tinker's workbench. I thought about putting it back here, but decided for now I'm going to spread them out a little bit around. We've already got one bench right at the back, so let's put one workbench further towards the front. Specifically, this one. There we go. That looks all right. Moving on. Taking a stop here to have a look at the stored tab along the top there. And I'm just getting rid of a bunch of stuff from this because there are options to either scrap or store things that you want to remove. And if you store them, you don't have to use materials to rebuild them. However, they do still detract from your camp budget that you can see in the top right there. And it is limited, so you will want to bear in mind that if you fill that stored tab up, you won't be able to build any more stuff. So, something to keep an eye on. For here, we're going back to our power armor station, and we're going to put a couple of stash boxes around as a little bit of extra decoration. Thinking outside the box a little bit and using things for purposes other than they were intended is always a good way to decorate things up, and stash box is a prime example of that. Beyond their functionality, they make a lot of sense to have storage for extra parts and for tools around, say, a workbench like that. So that's a good idea for a little bit of extra flavour. Speaking of extra flavour, this is technically a porch, and it makes sense to have somewhere to sit out here, so we're going to drop a bench on the front there. Decided against this one because it kind of blends in and you can hardly see the thing. The park bench here is a little bit easier to see. And yeah, it's a better choice for that, I think. Now I mentioned build order earlier, here's a good example of it, because the bench wouldn't go underneath the punch card machine, but the punch card machine will go over the top of the bench. So move it out and put it back. Again, you get the feel for this as you practice and build on, but build order is something that only really comes with time, and you need to keep it in your mind. So these potted plants are up there amongst the decoration MVPs for me. I really do like having a few plants around. They add a little bit of splash of colour, and they sort of add a little bit of containment and finish off little groups of objects, like, say, these workbenches, which we'll come back to later. If you want to just add a little bit of extra information and detail. They don't have clip-through walls, though. You may have seen the memes. So, we're going to add a little bit of power now, which is handy. I mentioned earlier, if you head to the power station to get different generators, we're going to go with this windmill, which is big and a bit noisy, but visually it's one of the more interesting generators, I think. So we'll tuck it on the end here to add a little bit of sort of containment to the end of the build. I can wire directly from this to my vendor there if I want to, but it looks a bit ratty with the wires trailing all over the place. I'm not a big fan of that. I tend to prefer running the wires a little bit more inconspicuously, which is not to say invisible, but just a little bit more out of sight. So we're going to tuck that conduit there onto the wall. And now, unfortunately, we can't go from this directly to the vendor because there is the corner of the building in the way. But if I hop up onto the stash box I've tucked in here, I can then place another one just on the corner next to it, and we can reach around the corner there and wire everything up without the wires trailing through the air too much. So we're going to apply that same principle here, put another conduit up the top, and just tuck the wire across there. Theoretically, that conduit should be sufficient to provide power in a radius around it to most of the internal space of the build here. It's actually not quite far enough over for that, so we do really need to add an extra one, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. So, moving on inside, a couple more things we want to do on the inside. I'm a little concerned here that the roof might cause some problems, and it kind of does, but we'll work around that in another useful way in a minute. But for now, we're going to start off with a kitchen. So we're going to need a cooking station somewhere. I'm going to grab this cooking stove, which again you'll find the plans for as you explore. Definitely a nice piece that. It's a bit beaten up, but looks very wasteland. And one thing that is a definite issue early on is sinks for your kitchens and bathrooms and things, particularly kitchens. We just don't really have them as a base item. So chemistry station is a handy workaround for that as it has one built in, but as you can see, it doesn't want to place. Sometimes placing the object and then picking it up and moving will help. In this case, didn't do the job. So what we're going to do is blueprint. So you can see the hold to blueprint option at the bottom. We're going to select that item. I'm going to hit create blueprint, which you can do with multiple items, but we don't want to do that here. I'm going to use this A blueprint here, as it's one that I just change over and over and over again, which is why I want it at the top of the list, because I use it for this technique. We're going to store the chemistry station, go to the blueprints, and place the blueprinted version of it down. Because for some reason, sometimes that just cooperates a lot better. And look at that. That's the way it should have gone the first time. So now we're going to grab the cooking stove, move it neat and tidy up to the end of the chemistry station there. That should work nicely. And we'll grab a stash box here. We're going to grab this cabinet, as it kind of matches the aesthetic of everything else, and use it as a work surface to just kind of enclose the kitchen here. One tip I would recommend when you're placing workbenches, and I didn't do it here, should have done, is to stop and check you can activate your workbenches and that the furniture around them isn't blocking access to them, because sometimes that'll happen, so worth sort of testing it as you go, and then you don't have to change everything later. So, last thing I want to show, you may have noticed I've taken the roof off, and that's because with the low roof like this, things will have a tendency, as I mentioned earlier, to jump up onto the roof instead of being on the floor, which is very annoying, but removing the roof solves that problem. Again, it's mostly because the roof is low, which is the case because I put half walls in, but it does look a little better, so we have to pay the price for that, unfortunately. So I'm going to put a rug down and a bed here, because we need somewhere to kip. And the rug's basically for a bit of visual interest, and also so it doesn't look like the feet are going to fall through the mesh floor. Not that they will, but it looks like it. I'm going to stick a random sleeping bag on there, which is completely unnecessary, but it looks like we need some form of bedding to my eye. So for visual aesthetic reasons, we're going to put a sleeping bag on. And to tie this together, we're going to need a little bedside cabinet. So there we go, that's a bit rustic, that goes quite nicely with everything else. I'll stick a lamp on there. So scroll over to the lights. Got a lot of different options. This will just take power from the conduit that is nearby, so no wires required. Some do require wires, but this is not one of them. That's quite a nice lamp. It's a bit too clean, I think, for this build, so let's just go basic. Grab this blue lamp here. There we go, that'll do. And that keeps the vibe of the build. Nice. So I'm going to grab a stash box and just tuck that on the foot end of the bed. This is something I like to do a lot because I feel like it ties that little kind of set of structures together. Basically, it's sets of 3, really, isn't it? And looks good for that. So now I'm going to grab a dresser because, well, looks like we're going to need somewhere to keep our clothes. Technically, we don't, but, you know. There we go. It's a stash box like everything else. And you put stuff on the top of that when you've picked things up to decorate with, if you like. So last thing I'm going to do up here for now is create a little sort of reading nook, because we've got a big bit of space down here that needs something. So I'm thinking we'll grab a chaise, which we can find there. Nice. Drop that in the corner. I think we need a rug here, because we've gone for this mesh floor. This wouldn't be a problem if I'd gone for the wooden floors, but then it wouldn't match up with the mesh on the stairs, so this is what it is. Let's grab the same rug, that'll do. Flip that round, because I think it looks better that way around. Nice. I mean, the planks they're clipping through are a bit weird, but we can just assume they've nailed the rug down or something. So there we go, we've got a seat in. Now we're going to need something to read, so I'm going to go to the display tab here and grab a magazine rack. I think we'll go for this sort of spinny one. Drop that there. We'll pop out of the build menu a moment and activate this. And now we can put magazines on the display. There's a whole bunch of different displays. You can put different things on them, depending on the type of display. Magazine racks, obviously, just magazines. And these are all sitting in my stash specifically for doing this with. So I hang on to them for that purpose. But there we go. A little splash of colour, a little something to read. You don't need to worry about them being stolen by anybody else. Nobody else can remove them from there. That's only the player who owns the camp. So, we're going to need a light here, so we'll move that display over, stick another table in, drop a light in so we can see to read our magazines, and that looks alright. Simple, but nice little corner to chill out in. Nice. So, let's tweak a couple of these walls. Said we're going to come back to it. I'm going to change the side walls here for solid ones, leave windows front and back, just for, again, a little bit of variety. Looks a little better. So, let's get those roofs back on. Back to the corner roofs. This basic set is the barn set. It's the one you'll start out with. I can't get that one on for some reason. That reason is the display there, the magazine rack. It's too tall and too close to a wall, so it's interfering with the snapping off the roof. But if I pull it out like that, by grabbing the rug, I can move everything out of the way and push it all back. If I just moved the rack on its own, it would probably jump up to the roof, in which case I would probably need to use the blueprinting technique we did earlier to get it to place. But there we go. I'm going to do a whole bunch more decoration off camera, carrying on the same theme. But for now, we'll head off, and I will see you guys in a finished tour in just a moment. And here we go. So, one finished product. Added a few little bits of extra detail here, added some doors and bits and pieces with a little splash of colour, and on the whole, as a starter home goes, I think this is not too shabby. So there's a couple of things I would probably do differently if I was to run through it again. I'd probably use the brick set, if possible, on the ground floor, and then the wooden stuff up top, because it would be a little bit more visually, it would pop a bit more, I think, is what I've got in mind, but on the whole, looks pretty decent. Might also add a little bit of extra dimensionality to that upper floor, just maybe one section that's a little bit higher to just break the shape as well, but on the whole, not a bad start. Let's make our way inside. You see I've got a couple of little bits of decoration by the gate there, kind of draw attention to it. Flamingos and stuff. Should be able to pick those up as you explore around. There we go, let's head on in. Over here we have our vendor that I've added a couple of extra bits around. So I've got the stash box that we saw earlier and added that little cardboard standee. It's quite common practice, that one, if you're new to the game, to put a cardboard standee pointing the direction to your vendors. It's quite handy in that regard, and it adds a little bit of extra colour and catches the eye, that sort of thing. A couple of extra parts out here, and I've added these oil lampposts as well, because in the evening they had a really nice shade of warm light, and they look pretty good, so definitely a fan of those. Pick them up from the white string on the antique plan with the other oil lamps. So the scrap box on the right down there and the ammo box there on the left, both of those are Fallout First items, allow for extra storage of scrap and ammo, funnily enough. Don't need to worry about that if you haven't got Fallout First. If you're new to the game, I would say probably hold off on that sort of thing and sort of see how you feel about picking that up later, because it's a reasonable investment. Speaking of things that happen later, on the right there we've got a couple of workbenches sort of swung out of sight. That is our brewing stations, the brewing and the fermenting station, that are available from the Wasted on Xion quest line. Didn't really add much to the power armor station. Interesting, maybe I should have done. Yes, those two workstations and the Wasted on Xion quest line are available in the Morgantown area if you stumble across it. I won't spoil it for you, but it's a fun little quest line with some really cool details. So, yeah, it was added way back in 2019, one of the first updates that, so good little quest line, definitely one to keep an eye out for. I've added a few crops out back. As you can see, we've got potatoes, meat, fruit and corn, and just around the corner we also have a water purifier, because if you need adhesive, and believe me, you need adhesive, this is an effective way of creating it at your camp. There is one drawback though, while we have a little look at our water pump and our toilet there, because you know, you've got to have them. Crops and also defensive structures, like say turrets, do eat up a lot of build budget, so you may want to think twice before you place them, as they can cause problems. But there we have our little water purifier, that little rusty thing down there. And don't worry too much about that turquoise thing next to it, that is my weather control station. You can pick those up from the atomic shop if you want, or occasionally from seasons as well, and they affect the weather in the radius of your camp. In this case, it's making sure it is always nice and sunny, so that I have nice kind of clear visuals for my little tour here. So, let's take a little swing back around, close up the gate. Bane of my existence, doors and gates. People are always leaving them open. So, there's another look at our couple of crafting stations that, as I say, you won't have to start off with, but if you can find the appropriate quest line up in Morgantown, you should have a good time acquiring those. So, we'll head on inside. You might recognise that door if you play Fallout 4. And we'll have a little look around at our internal decoration. So I did a couple of extra displays here. Got these are some of the smaller display cases available. There's taller ones, but I didn't want to block the windows. So these I've got a couple of teddy bears and stuff in there that technically don't quite fit, but they're okay. Nice option to display things that you've picked up around the game world in your camp. Like, for example, bobbleheads on the bobblehead stand there. Got the full set there, and I keep those in my stash for display purposes, as I do with the magazines that we've got upstairs. Little dining space under there, and added a couple of sofas. Again, you might recognise those from Fallout 4. Just a little seating area by the radio there. Should we let a little bit of sunlight in? Why not? There we go. I do like that you can open these shutters. They do actually add quite a nice vibe. It's quite fun. So taking a little look back at our kitchen here, I've got a bear-proof trash can there, and I put a cigarette machine in as well, just to kind of tie off the ends of the kitchen and make the thing look a little bit more interesting. Same with the chem cooler on the back there. A couple of bits and pieces by our dining table there. Used a couple of lockers there that function as stash boxes, but just tuck those in next to the stairs for a bit of decoration and interest at the bottom of the stairs there. Again, all about that visual interest. Got painting on the wall there. Didn't add a lot up here, just a couple of bits and pieces of extra detail. We've got the jukebox in the corner, and as I always do, there's always going to be at least one display item that I've forgotten to put something on. In this case, it's a couple of weapon racks upstairs. So let's stick a heavy weapon on the heavy weapon stand. I'm going to go for this 50 cal machine gun I've got in my stash box here. It'll do the job. Not too shabby. If you want to go for an easy-to-maintain heavy guns build, that's not a bad way to go, the 50 cal. Effective and quite easy to keep ammo in stock for. So, this will only hold small weapons like pistols and knives and the like. There are larger versions of this particular weapon rack, but I'm going to stick a water pistol on here, because why not? Not a particularly effective way to defend yourself if somebody invades in the night. Not that they will, but anyway. Still, fun to have a gun beside the bed. It kind of makes sense in the wasteland. And there we go. And reading looks much the same as it was. I do kind of like it. I wouldn't go quite so far as to describe this as cosy, but as far as a wasteland home goes, it's homely enough, I think. Yeah. Basically quite a simple little build that uses a couple of interesting techniques as well, that easy enough to get the hang of. And as I say, if you are struggling, do check out the other videos I've got linked in the description, because they'll give you a more detailed look at individual building techniques. And yeah, it creates a solid starter home that has a little bit more interest and shape and a bit more going on than many an early game box home will do. So hopefully you guys find that useful and informative. Got one light over the back there that didn't quite get powered because the conduit's just a little bit too far away. Needed to add one more really. But something we can always fix later. And we'll make our way over the doormat and outside. So I hope you folks found that useful and informative. If you did, please do consider dropping likes and subs, and kudos for making it this far through the video as well, because it's, I know it's a long one. Down below as well, we've got social media links, merch store, and channel memberships. If you'd like to support the channel that way, hit the notification bell as well, and then you catch all my uploads. Tons and tons of camps, as I mentioned earlier on the channel. If you want to check out some more advanced builds, do have a little look around. And join us for live streams as well. We're, of course, playing Fallout 76, and a few other bits and pieces on stream as well, so lots to catch here on the channel if you are interested. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.